Al was in. Oh, look, he's having some audio issues.
Hi, Dan, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good. I hear something in the background. All right. So as far as you know, Mark or Robbie, we don't have anyone from outside the planning commission?
I'm not seeing anyone.
I've got Juanita Rocha.
Oh, I don't see anybody. Okay, good.
Go to all attendees.
All right.
Okay, very good. All right. So we might as well get started.
I'm not seeing anybody.
No, not either.
You have to hit view all attendees, then you can see her.
Ah, okay, I see that. Ah, okay, great, thank you.
All right. Let's see. Welcome to the regular planning commission meeting. I tell you what, let's go on mute unless we're talking. How's that? I'm picking up some background noise from somewhere. All right.
All right.
Welcome to the regular planning commission meeting, Blanc Township, October 1st, 2020. Would we like to do the Pledge of Allegiance? Now that I'm muted, you can't respond. So I gotta unmute, right? I will go through the roll call. How's that? I see we have Mr. Mansour, Ms. Coulter, Mr. Brown, Mr. Yancho, Mr. Bandersky, Mr. Young speaking at the moment. We have our planning and building director, Mr. Lloyd. And I think that's everyone. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that correct? No, that's what I'm seeing is 6.
Mm-hmm.
So any changes to this evening's agenda? Mr. Bandersky, do you have any or anyone else?
No, but that we approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Mr. Bandersky to approve the agenda as presented. Support for that?
Support.
Support.
Support by Mr. Mansour. All right. All those in favor of proceeding with the presented agenda, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Next item on our agenda would be the approval of the minutes from our regular meeting of September 3rd, 2020. Any changes? Mr. Bandersky to the minutes?
So I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 3rd, 2020.
Motion by Mr. Bandersky. Approve the meeting minutes. That was as presented? No changes? Support for that?
Support.
That was by Mr. Mansour as well. All right, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is an opportunity for public comment. We do not have anything with public comment today, so anything that anyone would like to address the planning commission on, now would be the time. I don't know if there's anyone online that would like to do that.
Ms. Rocha, you have anything?
No, just listening in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
I think Mr. Robertson also joined us as well. So he's in there.
Hello, everyone.
Very good. We have
Hi
7
there.
now, Mr. Robertson.
You heard?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
Yes, glad you could join. All right, I don't believe we have any correspondence. So that would take us to old business. First item on the agenda under old business is master plan discussion. So, Mr. Lloyd, where are we at? You're on mute.
Plan completed, and that plan is out for review. So I'm just going to walk us through this real quick, just to gain a little perspective. I want to point out that you may or may not recall, but the Planning Commission spent about 18 months, in 2017 through 2018, looking at and identifying issues associated with the master plan, looking at what you needed to do in regards to an update. And so that information was used to make a determination that we did in fact need to do a rather comprehensive update. And then things really started to move. In October of 2018, the township issued a request for proposals. And then on December 19th and 20th, we chose the top 3 firms. We did have a master plan steering committee selected by the Planning Commission. And in January of 2019, the steering committee recommended the Planning Commission contract with Beckett and Rader, and that's who we've used since that time. And then the board, of course, authorized that contract and we signed it. And then starting pretty quickly in February of that same year, the Planning Commission formed the steering committee, and that was Mr. Gellings, Mr. Mansour, Jay Johnson, Joy Finkenbeiner, Chuck Sakrinas, Greg Boggs, David Laddie, and myself. And that was to help guide the project from the beginning to the end. And I think that group worked very well together. Had a lot of great support and help, of course, through Beckett and Rader, Leah in particular. And then from March 19 in 2019 through September of 2020, all the data collection and public surveys and meetings and interviews and stuff were going on. We did the land use analysis. We had steering committee meetings, planning commission meetings. And the Planning Commission finally got this thing on September 3rd. So we've moved pretty quick since that time. If you look at the minutes, you could see the discussions that we had in regards to the master plan. And then we sent the item on to the board. We had made their September 22nd agenda and they authorized distribution. That meeting was quite uneventful. I did go through a PowerPoint presentation with the board to bring them up to speed on where we were, emphasized a number of the areas that we concentrated on. And as of today, the letters are out. Those letters for the public review, they go to the agencies, the surrounding communities and all of the utility agencies. And we've also posted the document on the web. Thank you, Robbie. And we have ads in the papers and we've got a public hearing scheduled for December 3rd of 2020. The one thing that's sort of still not quite buttoned down on this, aside from whatever the comments might be from the public review, is the open house and the workshop and how we might run that, as well as the public hearing. I mean, let's face it, as we stand today, we're not really able to get together and have, real robust meetings. And so as it stands, we're likely going to need to do whatever we're going to do virtually. And so we're taking a look at how we might best and most successfully put that together. So I'm working with Leah on that, but what we think we may do is try to do some kind of a combination. Maybe we try to put together smaller groups and do this over a period of time, have workshops over a period of time, and then, allow the virtual meetings to take place, or a meeting, depending on how we set that up. So like I said, that hasn't been worked out, and I would appreciate any comments or suggestions that any of you might have. I don't mean to put you on the spot tonight, but over the next number of days, if you've got some comments, please just reach out or send a text or an email, whatever works best for you, and we'll give that some thought and put it in, and then we'll get back and be working with you, Planning Commission, to button down exactly how we're going to move forward with the open house workshops and as well as the public hearing. So you will be part of that decision, but until we have something for you to really look at, we're just gonna work with Leah and try to put something together.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Gelling?
Yes, sir.
Yep. So just a quick question, Mark. Do we have any, I don't call it hints, but do we have any best practices that we know about for maybe conducting some of these town hall open meetings? Are you aware of any? Or maybe we can ask Beckett and Rader if there is some technique that has been particularly helpful in getting good engagement from people remotely.
Yes, we do. They do. And I will do that. I think that's a wonderful idea. And I'll share the response with you as quickly as I get it. I think that's a very good suggestion.
Anything else, Mr. Lloyd, regarding the?
No, I just wanted to bring everybody, up to speed on where we're at. I mean, we've already gone through the exercise of putting the draft together, and we haven't talked a lot since, and I figured I'd let you know exactly where we are and how it went at the board meeting and what the status is and what you should be looking forward to. I would expect that we'll have something in November, mid-October through mid-November would probably be the time frame, maybe a little later in October. But you should expect that we'll probably try to do this open house or workshop sometime, late October through mid-November. And then we have plenty of time after that to make any modifications that we may need to make to the document, depending on any of the responses and comments we get.
Any questions or comments from planning commission members?
Oh, this is Dolores. I had a question of Mark. I mean, if we come up with comments, over the next month or so, should we send them to you or wait till the public hearing, or how do you want to handle that?
Are you, if I might, are you talking about comments from yourself or comments from folks that you might be talking with?
Well, both actually, but.
Okay. Well, we would be happy to take them as soon as you get them. That's your choice. My preference would be, please, send them to us before we put our meeting together. That way we're prepared to respond to your comments, wholeheartedly the night that we get together to talk about it. I would hate to have comments come from you that we're getting that night firsthand and then not be able to respond. So please get them out early. And once we've got the dates figured out, I'll send a notice and a reminder to the commission advising you to, give consideration to comments you might have and I'll give you a deadline.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Okay.
Thank you.
Mark, it's Ed Brown.
Hey, Ed.
Are you there?
I'm here.
I can rely on Ms. Colder because she's been around. I have as well, and Mr. Gellings. And who else am I maybe forgetting? I don't want to forget anyone. Maybe Mr. Giancho. But when we've done this in the past, it seemed to work out pretty well. I'll use my term, an open house, where we would have the representative from, what's the name of the company again? Forgive me.
Oh, that's Beckett and Rader.
Yeah, Beckett and Rader, thank you. They're in attendance, and I'd be more than happy to be there and some of the colleagues, but if I think back, it was pretty well received when we had a number of planning commission members there, as well as any specialists. So I would say that I'd be more than happy to volunteer to participate in that if we think that's a good way to go.
I'm making a note. Thank you.
What do my colleagues think about that?
Are you suggesting like an in-person meeting in addition to the?
Yeah, yes, I am, Ms. Calder. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I think if that's possible, it might make some sense because there may be people in the community that, either don't have access, to virtual meetings or would much
That's right.
prefer a meeting in person if that were available.
Well, one thing that I understand is happening right now is that some of the restrictions that have been, over this past period of time are being, lessened. And so we may find ourselves able to have, meetings that are up to 100 or so. And so if we can do that, or if we could conduct it out at the, depending on the weather, we may use a pavilion or, large building. But then that in itself creates some challenges, because if you've got a great big room and everybody's really spread out, I don't know how we would be able to display everything. But like I said, we've got some work to do, and we will look at all those options, and getting together, from my experience, having people in the room, that's a real, it's a very effective part of the whole planning process. And I sure hope we have that opportunity to get everybody in there. I like to see and hear and kind of touch and feel what's going on. And boy, with these Zooms and WebExes, it's just a little more limited. We get good information out, but you don't have the interaction as much.
I'm hoping that if things head in the right direction in terms of restrictions and everything, they may be lifted by the governor, where we can have something that would allow for a larger attendance.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. That comes into play. We'll take advantage of that.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
this is Mike. Some of our most valuable inputs are going to come from some of our elderly and long-term residents in the township, and those are the people that are most unlikely to participate in online or Zoom or any other type of meetings. And I don't think it would be appropriate to leave those people out. I think those are the people that we need to listen to.
Sure. Yeah, that's,
I agree.
I made a note, thinking the businesses as well.
So we definitely want that kind of input. We just got to make sure that they feel safe. Everybody is.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different level of comfort, I guess, at this point. So. All right.
Yeah, I've got that written down. Those are good comments, everybody. Thank you.
So anything else on the master plan?
Nothing from me.
Well, then we might as well move on to the Woodlands draft ordinance. Say, you as well, Mark?
Yeah, well, you've received a report, a letter, if you will, from me, and attached to that is the amended natural features protection, which is gone. Oh, excuse me, the tree protection ordinance is gone. The natural features woodland ordinance is in effect, and what we were asked by the township board when they eliminated the tree protection ordinance, we were asked, frankly, by Al, thank you, sir, to give some consideration to some of the components of that tree protection ordinance, because there's some language in there that fit, and it fit well, and it really did a good job of establishing some findings, and it provides definitions. It accommodates the historic specimen trees, and of course requires a permit. So as we went through, and I should just be frank about this, as Dolores went through and put this draft together for us, I think she did a wonderful job of incorporating that. We had a chance to chat a little bit, and she took off and ran with it and put together the draft that you have before you. And I think, we've got what we want to discuss this evening. And so if I might, and I don't want to put you on the spot, I hope I gave you plenty of warning. I think I let you know about this, Dolores, but would you mind walking through this? Would you like to walk through the ordinance and just kind of give us your some of the reasoning and thoughts behind the language? That'd be wonderful.
Okay, sure. And then Mark, you can chime in as well.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, David, has he taken a look at this and given any indication of his, comments or?
David and I have talked about it informally, and what he has said is he did take a look at it and doesn't see anything that's problematic, but I will verify his support, if you will, of the language and the format.
Okay. Okay, so basically what I'll do is I'll just kind of walk through the draft, which was sent to everybody, has draft written across the front of it. It's basically that first section on findings is taken essentially word for word, verbatim from a current provision in our zoning ordinance. That's section, 5.14. And I didn't modify those at all. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that, but basically, like I said, that was in the from our current zoning ordinance. So
actually, if I might interrupt, I'm sorry, but actually, I believe, Dolores, that this actually comes from the Code of Ordinances. This is part of the tree protection ordinance. So it's not a zoning ordinance. It's part of the tree protection ordinance that was just, moved over to be part of the zoning ordinance now.
Oh, okay. And then the next section basically are some definitions, historic tree and specimen tree and landmark tree. The definition of historic was basically taken from our current, let's see, we had a definition of a historic or specimen tree in the current Code of Ordinances, and basically I split them up into two separate paragraphs in the current repealed ordinance. It was all one, but basically these are you can read them. Historic tree is the tree which is designated by the Planning Commission to be of notable historic interest. A specimen tree is one that designated by the Planning Commission to be of value as a representative tree of a particular type or species due to its size, age, or other prominent botanical characteristics. Then the definition landmark tree is would be something new. Basically, what the purpose of this is to identify specific types of trees that we might want to give special attention and preservation to. The landmark tree was the proposed definition here is a tree of a botanical genus native to southeastern Michigan, and to kind of highlight and point out the importance maybe of preserving trees that are native to southeastern Michigan, and made a reference to a provision in the landscaping, or I'm sorry, the landscaping section of our zoning ordinance that identifies a list of trees that are native to Michigan, native to southeastern Michigan, and it's in the context of the landscaping standards for projects that require site plan and focusing on trees that are 16 inches, caliper 16 inches or greater. So, then the the next section there, section 3 is basically taken again from the, is this from the repealed ordinance? I can't remember. Anyway, I didn't really make any changes there. The idea is that to identify a historic or specimen tree, either the property owner or if anyone who's interested could petition the planning commission to make a decision. Actually, before I know I asked Mark this question as we were going over this. As far as you know, Mark, we have never specifically designated any trees as historic or specimen trees. You know
That was my question, if we had a list, but it sounds like we don't.
Oh, yeah, I don't, from my time on the commission, I haven't remembered any petitions for designating historic or specimen trees, but it's I say it's been in the ordinance, and so we kept it there.
I guess maybe the other comment on item C there is more maybe a question for Mr. Yancho. Is that size caliper make sense? Or is everything going to be a landmark tree? Mr. Biancho's question for you as to, or based on your.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Designation for whether a tree is a landmark. I made some comments and I emailed those to Mark. I'm sorry that I didn't email them to the rest of the commission, but a landmark tree, it should be very much similar to a historic tree or a specimen tree. And I think that a landmark tree could be a native tree or an introduced tree that is not invasive. We have quite a few trees that have been introduced. They came over on the Mayflower or even later, and we've accepted those, and they've become quite useful. I've made a list of changed, and that is definitely one of those. A landmark tree, very similar to a specimen tree, and I don't think there's any real distinguishing factors between those two.
Yeah, the only difference would be that the landmark trees are, you know, the way it's written now would be just trees that were considered native to southeastern Michigan, where specimen tree could be, you know, any tree or any particular species of tree.
And I'm not sure if the word landmark means to identify a section line. To me, a landmark means to identify a certain structure, a certain residential area, or an intersection of landscape lines. I mean, survey lines. I can't really wrap my head around the idea of a landmark tree.
Well, the landmark tree, basically, for purposes of the tree ordinance, is however we define it. I mean, if it has some other, you know, meaning or understanding in other contexts, then that's a totally different story. But I mean, we can define landmark tree for our zoning ordinance purposes however we wish, and that will, you know, be what.
So in order to completely explain my position, I would like to go to item A under definitions, if I may. And where item A suggests that decisions will be made by the planning commission,
Mhm.
I think that those decisions be made more by the historic district commission.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. I'm having a little bit of periodic disruptions in the downloading of the rest of you as I'm seeing. I don't know if others are having that difficulty, but there've been a little bit of gaps I've missed with regard to the discussion in the last 45 seconds or so. And so I hope it's not, the issue is not a technological one at my end, but in anticipation of the fact that it might be, I'm following along with the draft that was sent to us, but maybe I'm used to reading legislative bills or whatever, where we have strikeovers of what is being added or and what is being deleted. I'm having a little bit of, since I don't have the existing ordinance in front of me prior to the amended changes, I'm having a little bit of difficulty following the amendments that may have been being made, if any. So can you more specifically indicate where the amendatory language is with regard to the Natural Features Protection Woodlands Ordinance?
Mr. Chairman, I'd try to address that for Mr. Robertson, if I may.
Sure.
I would be delighted.
So under the item 2, section 2, definitions, item A, it makes reference to the planning commission determining the status of particular trees. And I believe that the historic district commission may be more appropriate to make that decision.
Well, this is, I guess, maybe from a big picture standpoint of what Mr. Robertson is asking, as I understand, this is really a new ordinance. I don't know if ordinance is the right word here, but we're taking some pieces.
Right.
The tree protection ordinance has been eliminated, but we thought there were some good things in there that we didn't want to lose.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, through you to yourself and the other members, the concern that I have, and I remember the request that was made by Trustee Mansour, is that anything that we amend, I want to make certain that we don't run into any constitutionality problems with that language of the same type that led to the repeal of the ordinance, the preservation ordinance in the first place. I want to make certain that we're not basically just adding back the deleted ordinance into this ordinance in any way in large or in small part. I just want to make certain that we don't have any constitutionality issues with what we do here.
I think we are adding some things back in small part, not in any large part, but
Not at all.
some things that we thought were worthwhile.
That's why I asked for that's why I wanted to be clear as to what the amendatory language was, and I was just having a little bit of difficulty with regard to with regard to what is actually being added to the existing Natural Features Protection Ordinance.
I guess, let me ask the question of maybe Dolores or Mark. This is new, right? This is all new. I mean, from a standpoint of this ordinance doesn't exist now, is that correct?
Yes, except that, if I might, that's a true enough statement. The fundamental component of the existing Natural Features Protection Woodland Ordinance, number 1 states, any property owner or his representative proposing to clear more than 25% of the trees of 8 inches caliber or greater on the site shall first notify the township of the intent of such clearing and earth changes, submit a proposed sketch plan. And I think what you'll find is that if you go down to item 4B, that's kind of where that's covered. So the crux of the existing section in the zoning ordinance is incorporated into the draft of the proposed new ordinance. And I think that it's, you know, all of the rest of the language that's in the existing ordinance is just verbiage. What the idea here was to identify and establish the reasoning for doing this. I think that was one of the keys, was to say, well, how do we get to do this? And I think I personally believe that Mr. Mansur did a really nice job of identifying the fact that the findings from the tree protection ordinance probably ought to be reflected in this, well, in our existing, but in our what's going to be our new ordinance, so that we do have the support and justification for being able to do this. You know, it's clearly provided for in the state constitution, and therefore we're just looking to promote it and modify it to the extent that it works great for the citizens of Grand Blanc Township. I think we've got it in there. And if I might also, I'll just add this. By all means, as we get through this and work towards the end, if you will, adoption, Mr. Laddie will weigh in heavily. And I can assure you that what we've got here, well, I'm not going to tell you that it's all just wonderful and fine. I'll do it this way. I can assure you that Mr. Laddie will let you know that it's all well and good, and it's fine, and there are no constitutional challenges to the approach that we're intending to take.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, what are your plans for the meeting today? Are we taking a action on this item in tonight's meeting?
We wanted to get comments from the planning commission members.
Okay.
And then decide where we go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you for the explanation, Mark. I'm not sure that I'm ready for a vote on it this evening, but that's just myself. And I appreciate the fact that we'll have David weighing in on the subject, Mr. Laddie weighing in on the subject in this process, and I would like to hear that in due course.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Mr. Yancho?
I would like to agree with Mr. Robertson that the ability to strike out and add through colors and other things makes any potential changes or recommendations from Planning Commission members makes that much easier to understand. My software would not allow me to do that. I'm not sure if I was doing something wrong, but I was not able to make a strikeout or other changes to the PDF that I was presented with. So,
well, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Yancho, thank you very much for your support there. This was not intended as a criticism. I just find would find it easier to read myself. I don't know, perhaps others have. I just don't happen to have the before and after in front of me. I have the after, but not the before, and that's maybe my fault. I apologize for that. But yes, it's much more easily readable if we have that technology available to us. But if not, we can manage through it.
No, I would much prefer to have the ability to replace different colors or underlining or strikeout or whatever it is. That's the way I'm accustomed to looking at things.
Let me ask the same question again. This doesn't exist or didn't exist.
Right.
That's right.
So this is all new. There's nothing that was struck out or added, because this is all new.
Okay, all right.
It was taken from different places and combined into something that's new that didn't exist.
Yeah, that's correct. I just wanted to clarify, if you look at the current natural features protection woodlands section of our current zoning ordinance, that's section 5.14, you will see that we basically, what we have proposed here is essentially a complete rewrite of that. So to say that you could go through and, strike out and add and insert doesn't fit, because we have essentially replaced the current 5.14 section in our natural feature section in our zoning ordinance with a rewrite that pulls the findings from the repealed tree ordinance, and inserts them in the new proposed woodland ordinance, and then also pulls the, some information from the definitions come from some language in the repealed tree ordinance. So, like I said, I mean, it's really not possible to do the
Okay, well,
draft where you strike and insert.
okay, that provides some explanation. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay.
Chairman Gelling?
Yes, Mr. Manser.
Yeah, so I appreciate Ms. Coulter's efforts here. And in looking through it, I guess I have two comments. First, I think that it's more appropriate for Planning Commission to be the ultimate kind of arbiter on the historic tree. I mean, if the Historic Commission wants to weigh in and provide some support, that would be great. But in the end, the Planning Commission here has a kind of a higher level of responsibility, and so I think it makes sense that that the designation would rest with this group. And then the second point is on section B that's in your 4B. Isn't that basically just pulled from an existing ordinance? I mean, that was not part of the repealed ordinance, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, actually, that's from section 5.141 of the Natural Features Protection Woodlands Ordinance. It's,
so that's currently in force.
Yes, and we weren't looking to change all that. We were simply looking to support the ordinance that we do in fact have by referencing the state's standards and requirements. So, I think we've accomplished that. And I don't think that the Planning Commission wouldn't want to put a provision in the zoning ordinance that we're asking the Historic District Commission to do anything for us on, because it's the Planning Commission. The zoning ordinance is done by the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem from the previously existing ordinance. Was that ordinance was from the Code of Ordinances, which meant the Planning Commission really had no say in any of that. That was not an ordinance for the Planning Commission. That was the Code of Ordinances. Matter of fact, the procedure for appealing it went to the Township Board. Now that it's in the zoning ordinance, everything that's in the zoning ordinance goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's got an automatic, clear-cut process. It makes it so much simpler. And not that we would expect it, but the penalty provisions are in the zoning ordinance as well. So taking that and then putting it back into the Code of Ordinances, I think that just starts and opens up another can of worms for us, I'm afraid. I think this is absolutely the right approach, and incorporating this additional language, particularly the findings, is really the crux of the exercise. But it didn't make sense to just stick a thing called findings in there without putting in some good quality supportive language. And I think that Ms. Coulter has done an amazing job of doing that. So what this has turned out to be is, a little bit of I guess you could call it a hybrid, but it's got a very small piece of the existing woodlands ordinance, and a number of good provisions, findings, definitions and stuff from the tree protection ordinance. So it's really just a good combination of the two, and I think that's what it reflects.
Yeah, and also wanted to include a provision that's in 4A, just to clarify that, these requirements about tree removal in the woodland section do not apply to tree removal in connection if anything you're requiring is the site plan review. That wasn't clear, I think, previous, in our current version of the Woodlands ordinance. It's very specific, provisions in
Yep.
the zoning ordinance that talks about this review.
That's right.
Section 4B is talking about if you exceed 25%, and then C has got some other specific cases where a permit will be issued.
Right.
And almost automatically, right?
Yeah, basically, if a tree removal requires a permit, is specified in section B, then section C talks about what the criteria will be, and it's kind of spelled out there, and has one more of the following criteria. Some of them are pretty obvious: if the tree is dead or terminally diseased or damaged, etc. And the permit would be granted or issued. And I did, as we were drafting this, I asked Mark, well, is there an appeal procedure if someone, is denied a permit? And Mark assured me that it would be treated as any other kind of decision of the building department in terms of issuing or not issuing permits. Expand on that, Mark?
Yes, and that would be appealable to the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's the standard process.
So that's why I didn't include anything in the draft about any kind of appeal process, but it's already in place. It's now in the zoning ordinance. It's going to be governed by the provisions of the zoning ordinance for permit procedures.
That's exactly right.
So I guess from my perspective, I don't really see any issues with this other than I'm not clear. Do we need the designation for landmark tree? Is it different enough from a specimen tree?
Let me weigh in on that a little bit, you guys.
Sure.
I'm going to tell you how I'm seeing this, and I may be way off, so no big surprise there, right? A historic tree, clearly, it's one that, we as a community determine has some historic value. It had something to do with something in time in our community. It's on a piece of property that has some historic historic value. So, that's the whole idea there. And then moving to a specimen tree, I mean, clearly what we're talking about there is a tree that's of a particular type or species. And that basically a specimen tree is a single tree that really does a very good job of representing that tree species. That's a specimen tree. Now, a landmark tree, and I'm just going to tell you what I think, guys, is a tree that you go look at the big oak tree over here in the corner of Hill and Fenton. There's a big oak tree over there, turn left. That's a landmark tree, in my opinion, okay? That's how I see that, you guys. That's more of the way that I would view those three definitions. If you all want to disagree, that's fine, but that's where I've been on this from the beginning.
And that's fine. I'm just trying to understand the difference between the specimen. What's the difference between specimen and landmark? That's what I mean.
Yep, that's good. A specimen tree is a tree that represents that particular tree species very, very well. So you got a big blue spruce. It's 30 feet high and it's perfectly shaped. It's a specimen tree. It doesn't have impacts from other trees near it that would prevent it from growing to its full size. That's a specimen tree. And that's different than a landmark tree. A landmark tree could be a big ugly thing that you just go, hey, that tree right there, the old rotten oak, that's a landmark tree. That's just kind of the way that would be. That's the way I see this, you guys.
Okay.
Well, landmark trees are basically focusing on trees that are native to southeastern Michigan and also of substantial size. So, that also distinguishes them. A specimen tree could does not have to be a native tree. It could be any type of tree that's,
Okay.
you know, particularly outstanding representative of the species of tree, whatever its origin. So,
That helps clarify that for me. My question then is 16 inches large enough to make something a landmark tree?
actually, I had the same question, and I'm open to, you know, an opinion on whether that's, you know, an appropriate sort of.
To me, yeah, landmark is like, wow,
criteria.
that's a big tree. That's very unusual.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 16-inch trees out there, in my opinion, but that's the only question I have remaining then.
Well, I think that, you know, that's really going to be a determination by this group. I suppose what we could do is we could question some experts. And I know that we asked Mr. Yancho about that. I don't know if we got real direct and right at that. I don't remember. Mike, you want to re-weigh in on this, as whether or not you think that a tree at 16 inches is big enough, if you will, to be noticed, to be designated? What do you think? Is that too small?
A 16-inch tree is quite a small tree.
Oh.
A 36-inch tree is a large tree.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
There are 36-inch trees in this township, and those are large trees.
Yeah.
And there are resources to help locate and find large trees and their historic trees in this township. And all you have to do is go out to the Perry House and some of the other historic sites around this township, and you'll find lots of trees, 24 to 36 inches in diameter. So 16 inches is not large at all. And the reason that I refute some of the takeaways from the former ordinance is because I don't think the former ordinance was correct in its definitions, in how trees are determined to be either specimens or landscape trees or landmark trees. There are, you know, Mark, I don't know if you've seen it, but I should have sent that email to everyone on the planning commission. I sent you an email a couple hours ago, or 3 or 4 hours ago, of ideas that I had put together because I've got an infected tooth and I wasn't sure I was going to be able to be on this meeting. So,
we appreciate your expertise, and I think we would all probably like to see your comments. How that
Let me
fits in.
just, I have never gotten them. I've gone through it. The only thing I got from you, Vince, was your comment about, you know, the fact that you might not make the meeting, but I never got anything earlier from you about
This is Mike.
anything on
There was
this.
get an attachment with that.
Nothing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
my
okay. I'm
fault.
just saying, you know, but we'll be happy to take a look at that for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that Dolores, Miss Coulter has done, as well as you, Mark. And I think that we're moving in the right direction, but I think some subtle changes will help smooth out some of the wrinkles that we may run into with this particular terminology.
Well, let's take a look. So that's what this meeting is about, is, you know, getting a consensus from you guys on how and what to do as far as this ordinance goes. I guess for me, I would just say, I think at a minimum, maybe what we ought to do is take a good look at this definition of landmark tree and take a look at this size that we're talking about. And I think that you know, that should be easy enough for us to address, I would hope, that we can make a determination as to whether or not, you know, a 16-inch tree is large enough to qualify as a designated landmark tree. So let's see, that's 5107D. I'm just gonna double check.
Is it possible a PDF that is not only so that
Pardon
a
me, sir?
person can make some changes in different colors and so on, or anybody could do that. Any planning commission member could then make changes that they thought might be appropriate.
Yeah, I think we can get you whatever format is easier for you to modify or anybody to modify. PDFs aren't always too easy to modify. But yeah, we definitely like to see your input, Mr. Yancho. And so at this point, like I said, I think the size of the trees are the thing I had a question about.
Let me see if I can add a little more light to this. And I may or may not here, but in the section that we're talking about, the language in there, if you look at the landmark tree, it references section 5107D. And when you go through that, what you'll find is that there are trees that have been identified as suggested plant materials. And there's oaks, hard maples, hackberry. I mean, there's a number of them listed, maybe looks like maybe upwards of 12 to 15. Oh, it goes on even a little further. So there's quite a few, actually, quite a large number of them. And so that's the reference that is making. And then the only remaining component of that, you guys, is the size of that tree. So I think then maybe what we ought to do, because now I would love for you to weigh in on this, Mike. If you looked at section, 5107D, you'll see that there's a whole list of, deciduous canopy trees. Then you've got deciduous ornamentals, and you've got evergreens and narrow evergreens, large shrubs. You see, when you incorporate all of them, and if we're looking at using a number, that number 16, I don't know if we're ever going to get a large shrub, a dogwood, that's going to meet that, but it's referenced here. So I'm just saying, we're going to, this is an area that we probably ought to revisit. I think you're right. And I think we ought to look at the size. And then I really think we ought to look at what we're referencing, and maybe we need to, because it even gets into small shrubs, I'm not even going to try to, the holly, the potentilla, I don't even know some of these trees, to be honest, or plants. So I think that might be a little bit of an area for us to tackle, because I don't know that, I'll be honest, I was only looking at the first section of those trees. The deciduous canopies. I wasn't looking all the way through the shrubs and stuff, and I don't think that it was ever intended to require that the shrubs be 16 inches in diameter. So I think that we could revisit that.
I agree.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Is there any other aspects of the ordinance that anybody has any concerns about? I know you, Mr. Robertson, you made a comment about the concern about the legality and our support for it and our constitutionality. We'll make sure that we're good there. I do think that we need to take a look at this, and I'd really appreciate, Mr. Yancho, if you take a look at 5107D on our behalf and go through that the entire list there, all the way down to where there's trees not permitted, and yeah, give us your thoughts on which ones ought to be or not. Because
I'll do that. I do have a few other minor changes that I would recommend, and I don't think I would, once everybody sees those in writing, I don't think there will be opposition. work with you, Mark, to get a copy and mark it up so that it becomes very apparent to all the commission members that what I'm suggesting.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, does that wrap up our discussion on the Woodlands draft ordinance for tonight? So no action this evening. We're going to get additional input from our expert as well as any planning commission members that would like to offer, and then we'll have a little more discussion next meeting.
Okay.
No, this is Vince. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I have three quick things. First off, when talking about the specimen tree, I would add the word shape. You got size, but when Mark described it in terms of its shape, the word shape would help clarify that, I think, a little bit.
Okay.
Secondly, is the planning commission going to go out and look for these trees and identify them?
No.
Well, then what's the value of having this terminology?
Well, there's residents and folks in town, property owners who may want to do that for preservation and just to note their trees historic or it's a specimen or whatever. Yeah.
So we're going to communicate with them and say, if you think this is appropriate, give us a call.
That would be how the process would go. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then thirdly, if I have a historic tree, I'm not going to take it down, but I'm going to trim it quite a bit. Do I have to get a permit for that?
It's only for removal.
Okay. That answers my questions.
Anyone else before we move on?
Nope.
Keep in mind, if you don't mind, that what we're, there aren't a lot of historic trees designated in town. So if somebody goes out and cuts a tree down, it may have qualified or somebody may have wanted it to be a historic tree, but unless it's designated as one, it can be cut down. I want to be clear about that.
Well, then I go back to my question. And I don't have one of these, although I do have a big oak tree. If I want to cut it down, after I cut it down, my neighbor says, hey, you shouldn't have done that. But I come back to the identification. Unless we go forward and communicate to the community that if you have some of these, please bring them forward so we can put them and protect them. I'm just concerned that just having this verbiage out there, what's going to happen? Because most people won't read the verbiage, won't understand it, and they'll just do their thing.
Yeah. If I might, I appreciate that, Vince. That's a very good point, and I think we want to catch that. And so I think that needs to be considered as well. I think it just needs to be incorporated in and be a part of this. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Next item on our agenda would be new business. I don't believe we have any unless anyone else has something they wanted to bring up. Then we would move on to committee reports. Mr. Mansour had to leave. He sent me a note. So he said he didn't have anything. Do you have anything else, Mr. Lloyd, planning and zoning standpoint?
No, I'll leave that. I think we got a ZBA item and I'm not sure. Well, we got a couple things to talk about and that's on here. Ed can bring those to your attention. Mr. Brown.
Oh, yes, if you're ready.
Yeah, Mr. Brown.
Well, we had in the Zoning Board of Appeals, a pretty interesting evening a few weeks ago. One of the sign companies who has a large, very large sign, Mr. Lloyd, help me here. I think it's probably 55 by 65 in terms of the signage.
Well, it's about 650 square feet.
Yeah. And the sign is over there near the McLaren corporate offices on I-75, I would say northbound. And Michigan MDOT has come through and told the sign company that the sign is encroaching in the right-of-way of northbound I-75 traffic, and they want it moved. So the sign company came to the Zoning Board of Appeals requesting that they be allowed to move the sign off of the right-of-way, but onto property of McLaren. And so we had quite a discussion on that particular subject regarding allowing them to move it again from the right-of-way on McLaren property. And the bottom line was the board voted unanimously to deny the request of the sign company. And there was a lot of contention in that one. And then secondly, we also had one of a property owner, and I'm trying to think of the name of the subdivision, but it's on
Ottawa Hills.
Ottawa Hills. Thank you. Where a homeowner built I want to call it BMX track, but I don't think that's the right term.
It's exactly true. That's it.
Oh, okay. And they built this BMX track in their backyard. And first of all, they didn't pull a permit and asked whether or not they had to. And I went out and visited the site and had a chance to talk with a next door neighbor. And they are the ones who filed a complaint regarding this being in their neighbor's backyard. So again, we had lots of input from the neighbors around the house in question. And ultimately, when all was said and done, we had some upset people, that's for sure. But the board voted again unanimously 5-0. And I don't think to deny the request of the petitioner. And I don't think in all my years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, we've ever had two more contentious requests than we did in that meeting. So it was interesting to say the least.
Sounds like it.
Let me add a little something to that with regards to the BMX ramp. Now, that ramp is made out of wood. It stands about 14 feet high. It is 64 feet by 24 feet, I believe. It's over 1,600 square feet. And the issue, one of the big issues there was, of course, they did it without permits. But really, we would normally just work through those things with somebody. But in this case, the structure that they built was way over what the ordinance would allow for an accessory structure. The ordinance allows you to have an accessory structure on your property or accessory structures that equal the size of the footprint of your house. So if you've got a 1,500 square foot, bottom floor, you can have 1,500 square feet of storage or of accessory buildings. Now that's quite a bit. But they went so far beyond that. I mean, they were about 800 square feet over, more than double the size that they could have had. And again, they didn't pull permits. So they had a kind of a double whammy, if you will, against them on that really made it difficult to even be able to approve it. Now, I do want to tell you that I'm currently working with the owners. They've come in and they'd like to find a way to build a ramp. They call it a ramp, the structure in their yard and use it, but they want to scale it down to a size that's acceptable. And so, we'll see how that goes and whether or not they'll follow through. But that is something that they're talking about. I'm not so sure that they'll be able to do it, but of course they have that option to do that if they were to choose to do that.
Okay, very good. Interesting.
Oh, and if I also might add, I did miss this. The Historic District Commission, you mentioned Perry House or the Perry property not too long ago. The Historic District Commission just recently completed painting the kitchen out there. And they've hung some really wonderful photographs and pictures inside of the house, as well as some other artwork and things that have been framed and put up in there. we're also in the process of purchasing a television and a stand with the TV would have a DVD player that would allow a looped program to play to continue to show historic, activities or historic information about the property. So, they're really moving forward, not really expensively, but they're moving forward and trying to kind of bring that place up to snuff where folks are going to want to use it more often. So it's taking shape. Things are pretty nice. And I think they're going to try to open it up for a little bit coming up here soon for some folks to come in and take a look. And if anybody's interested, let me know and I'll see about getting you the information on when that's going to happen. And you could maybe go over there and take a look yourselves.
Sounds good.
That could be a good weekend activity for a family.
Yeah, it's exactly. I got great trails and stuff out there. And boy, do they have landmark trees.
Forgive me, I have a Jack Russell that's demanding my attention at the moment. I got to let her out. I'll be right back.
Motion to adjourn? No. Site plan review, we haven't had a site plan in the last month, but I understand we do have something coming up, Mark. Is that true?
I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. Would you repeat that, please?
We did not have any site plans in the last month.
Right.
But I understand we may have something coming up.
Yeah, we've got a couple of projects that are going to be done administratively. They're pretty straightforward. This one's kind of an interesting one. On Saginaw, Al Serra's had a body shop up there for quite a long time. They're looking at rehabbing that entire property, the exterior of the building. And, no expansion, no modifications from the use standpoint, but they are going to make some improvements on the exterior of the building. And that's a wonderful thing that we're having happen over there in Saginaw. That end of town, as I think everybody knows, needs a little bit of attention, and they're going to be upgrading that over there. We had a project approved, this was at the site plan review group, Dan, you'll remember the Reed Road Storage Project, Vince and Ed. What was discovered when the item went through the process and went over to the county is that there's an unrecorded easement over there apparently, and there's quite a large county drain running right underneath that property. So where they had designed their building, a couple of their buildings, is going to be right over that drain line. And so that's going to either need to be modified to accommodate the drain line, or maybe it needs to be scrapped.
Wow. Was not recorded?
No, we got the information from the county. The county never recorded their easement, or they never took an easement on that property when they put their drain line in. I don't get that, but it happens. There are some unrecorded things out there, and that's why you do a title search. And guess what? It didn't show up during the title search either. So, but we caught it in time to prevent them from building a building over top of it, and that would have been an incredible nightmare. So, we got an upset, a developer who would love to have been able to do his project without, this kind of an impact, but he's probably a lot happier than he would be if we would have ended up having to make him modify his building after it was built, or help us, might have been torn down. So, we just, those things happen, not a lot, but it did happen. And so we're working on it and trying to find a way to help get that back on track.
Okay.
Oh, and if you haven't noticed, they got equipment piled up over there at the old, where the new Kroger gas station is going to go, McCandlish and Saginaw. If you haven't been around the area, you'll notice if you go by there that there'll be a gas station over there before too long. This is so hard to get. I don't understand why. But it's been really hard for us to get work with these folks and consumers to get them to disconnect the electrical out there. That's what's causing the grief, the gas, either one, the utilities, I'll just put it that way. So it took us like 3 months to get the utility companies to disconnect the building behind the township hall when we bought that old Playland place. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to wait. It's just, they're busy. David, we need your help. Talk later.
All right. Very good.
Yep.
Having help.
All right, that's it for site plan review. Anything else from anyone?
If not, this is Vince. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn at 8:18.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Bandersky, that was support by, I didn't hear,
Mike.
Mr. Yancho. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 Opposed? I think we, motion passed 6-0.
All right.
Very good.
Well,
Thank you very
thanks
much.
to everybody.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
In
Good night.
particular,
Mark.
Robbie, thank you, as always, Robbie, thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Rob.
helping us do this.
Yes,
Mark, stay on for a minute, Vince.
Oh, okay, sure.
thank you.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Mike.
Aye.
Good night, folks.
Everyone.
I'm right here.
You missed that.
Okay. All right. You know, I apologize for the screw up tonight, but I cannot access off my computer
Oh,
the website.
yeah.
And so, and incidentally, I didn't get a email for the website until 6:45.